Not only did Fat Albert Einstein repeat himself, he also made a claim that indicates lying and the dementia might be starting to team up. Trump has done more for black Americans than almost anyone.
There's nobody that has done more for the black community than President Trump.
Thank you, Harriet Schlubman, for those thoughts on this holiday.
Trump has a history of spreading outrageous and numerous lies, from the greatest inauguration crowd ever to his electoral victory. Yet he has recently shown compassion for African Americans. I wonder how many more falsehoods he will tell Donnie. But luckily for us, Jimmy Kimmel is looking into Trumpy Dumpy's unfounded allegations. One joke at a time, let's explore some of the scams. On this occasion, Kimmel stated that the comic from Late at Night had recently published an amazing spoof of the disgraced former president, and he really went all out. Kimmel did not hold back his gaze. Kimmel covered every aspect of Trump's long list of indiscretions, from the perfect phone call with Ukraine to dousing Co. in bleach to ward off infections. However, Donnie's diapers weren't the best choice for managing the sick burns. On Truth Social, the thin-skinned EXC commander-in-chief complained about how nasty old Jimmy was acting like a big bully during a toddler's meltdown. Even though Trump and his MAGA cronies might have been missiled, "Cry me a Trumpy," Grumpy River Kimmel isn't afraid to call a spade, or, in this case, to call a fake a fraud. The stakes are really high, as Kimmel so eloquently puts it, and it is imperative that we stop liars from getting away with disseminating false information. In addition to criticizing Trump, Jimmy Kimmel exposed some of Donnie Doll's worst scams. Kimmel mockingly highlighted the orange turd, saying that black people are so much on my side now because they realize what's happening to me also happens to them. Trump made the absurd assertion that he has done more for African Americans than any president since Abraham Lincoln.
I've done more for the black community than any president since Abraham Lincoln. I say it, nobody can dispute it.
I love these guys. Look at these guys. Blacks for Trump. I love you.
Black people really like Trump.
Look at my African American over here.
Yes, grumpy Trumpy. But folks, that's not all. According to a book about The Apprentice, Trump was unable to recall any previous interviews or discussions. At that, Trump said, "No, I have no memory of that," even though he had only spoken to the author a few weeks earlier. Someone appears to be in need of some go boba. Kimmel also provided details regarding Trump's memory issues.
We got more details about the state of Trump's big, beautiful brain from the author of a new book about The Apprentice, Ramin Satuda. He interviewed Trump on multiple occasions, some in person, and that even though they spoke at length about his old TV show, Trump had trouble remembering who he was.
Realizing this, as Trump said, there's just one little problem. Joan Rivers supported him in the 2016 election. She passed in 2014. Kimmel laughed. So he must be right. Dead people can still vote. Maybe she used her old Ouija board to do so. Trump is distributing false information that even a 5-year-old could debunk. But this deceit on Sunday gave the impression that he was still in control. The author of the book claims that Trump said he had to deal with Afghanistan.
Confidently told me and declared that Joan Rivers voted for him when he ran for president, and Joan Rivers died in 2014, so she would not have been able to vote for Donald Trump.
So he's right. Dead people are voting. Maybe she voted with her Ouija board. I don't know.
Even though Trump hasn't been in office long, Kimmel said, that has to be his code word for the loo, right? I got to make Afghanistan look like someone's having a difficult time letting go of power. These shocking remarks from Kimmel expose the depths of Trump's delusion and dishonesty. It's not just harmless hyperbole either. Rather, it's a pattern of untruths and ambiguity that raises serious issues. Case criticism did not spare Don Jr. either. Jr.'s peculiar way of pronouncing Joe Biden caught the attention of the late-night host, who said it sounded like he got bitten by a radioactive morning zoo or something. Overall, we find it impressive that Don Jr. can express any opinion at all, despite constantly sticking his foot in his mouth. But Kimmel's discussion of Trump's mental health raised the most alarm.
Check this out. Joe Biden, 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 secretly flying.
The other sniveling MAGA turd who has a weird twist on our president's name is Don Jr.
Joe Biden, 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 Joe Biden.
Kimmel employed humor throughout his roast to bring up significant concerns over Trump's actions and mental state. He quoted an author who had mentioned Trump's memory loss in an interview, to which Kimmel retorted, saying, "It's very scary to think that the guy who is telling us to inject bleach into our veins is just now deteriorating mentally. Yeah, that's a pretty low bar even for Trump."
He got bitten by a radioactive morning zoo or something. Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Students were allowed to bring their phones into class. They weren't supposed to use them in class, but of course they did anyway. Here in LA, school is out for the summer, but there are some big changes on the way for next year. The LA School Board voted to ban cell phones during the school day.
Kimmel revealed the lies and delusions of the former president in a way that was both instructive and enjoyable. Though it's a masterful example of Kimmel's use of humor to make political commentary, he wasn't finished yet. Regarding some of Trump's most outlandish claims, including his flagrant lies and self-aggrandizing boasts, he had plenty more to say. Kimmel can work with enough Trump material.
He told you that while you were interviewing him at Trump Tower, he told you he needed to go upstairs to deal with Afghanistan?
With the, quote, the Afghanistan is how he referred to it.
That would mean that when he was drawing in Sharpie on the weather maps, he was fine. It's very scary to think that the guy who was telling us to inject bleach into our veins is just now deteriorating mentally.
And the host of the late-night show was more than happy to chastise him for lowering the bar. After being roasted more than a Thanksgiving turkey, how did the huge man react? People are not at all well. Let's face it, it's just another Tuesday for Donald. But let's not pretend that he was aiming to break a world record when he launched into an upset Twitter diatribe. Misleading data.
We got more details about the state of Trump's big, beautiful brain from the author of a new book about The Apprentice.
So my first interview down was in May. He wasn't doing a lot of interviews. And then we sat down again towards the end of the summer. And when I sat down, there was a very blank expression on his face. And he couldn't recall. He said it was a long time ago. And then we had to start from scratch. So the interview started from square one.
I don't know about that. It's not like him to repeat himself. Trump, of course, denied that vehemently. His spokesperson called the writer a nobody and a loser, which I guess is why he took time to do interviews with him. One with the nobody, one with the loser.
It's like watching a grown man go back to his terrible twos. Trump had a full collapse, so Kimmel must have touched a nerve. But here's the thing. Trump's outbursts to the late night hosts. But when the head of state can't handle a few jokes about himself, there are significant consequences. It says a lot about his personality and ability to lead. If he can't keep his cool during a joke, what hope is there that he will have during a serious crisis? Presidents need to be able to take the heat and maintain focus on what matters most. Therefore, it's risky for them to have thin skin and a fragile ego. Nonetheless, Trump seems more focused on maintaining his personal reputation than the health of the country. He would sooner scold comedians than deal with the pressing problems that Americans face. This is another example of his post-roast outburst. It is a sad state of affairs when the president is more focused on stroking his own ego than on the people he is supposed to represent. Even if it is simple to laugh at Trump's most recent outburst, it is crucial to keep the bigger picture in mind. Jimmy Kimmel's humorous mockery of the politician wasn't the only thing that sprang to mind when it came to the kind of leader we have in the White House. Someone who is unforgiving of criticism, easily enraged by anyone who doesn't agree with him, and who puts his own interests ahead of everyone else's. Is roasting an orange turd appropriate? Why should we care?
Also seemed to be a bit confused about the fact that he wasn't actually president anymore.
But he also seemed to think that he still had some foreign policy powers. And there was one day where he told me he needed to go upstairs to deal with Afghanistan, even though he clearly didn't.
Right. Not a Afghanistan, the Afghanistan. That's got to be his code word for the toilet, right? I got to make the Afghanistan.
So buckle up, folks. This is about more than simply a delightful time to laugh. Kimmel's playful comments about Donnie's nappy expenses are more meaningful since they draw attention to a beneficial thing. The sharp contrast between Trump's parallel reality and the real world the rest of us live in is highlighted by Kimmel's parody of Trump's assertion that no one has done more for the black community than him. Kimmel also makes light of worries about Trump's mental instability by bringing up an interview in which the irritable Trump stated that a famous person had supported him. Kimmel is beyond just mocking the president. Kimmel's roasts of Trump also make us wonder if the man in possession of the nuclear codes is holding all the cards. raising some very serious red flags. Point your gun at the group of scrawls and spawn that are surrounding him and make fun of them while they not in agreement with his outrageous comments about people like Stephen Gerald Miller and Donnie Jr. Kimmel is attacking the bigger culture of deceit and bootlicking that Trump promotes.
But there is a team of loyal henchmen who are very eager to do Lord Tax Evader's bidding. One of them is a golem-like goblin named Stephen Miller. Listen to the way Stephen Miller speaks.
Is that President Trump is literally running to save democracy. What's so ludicrous about Democrats attacking Trump as some kind of threat to democracy?
He's like a lethargic Lex Luthor.
Ultimately, the rest of us should be grateful to Kimmel for grabbing the orange bull by the horns, even though the MAGA cult may lament that Kimmel was making fun of poor Donnie. Kimmel is more than simply cracking jokes. He is slicing through the spin and pushing us to critically examine the farce that was the Trump administration in a society overflowing with alternative facts. Perhaps some harsh comedy would serve as the perfect reality check. As long as Trump keeps flapping his KFC mouth and spewing lies, comedians like Kimmel will have to keep roasting him over the comic coals in order to prevent the idiocy he brought to the White House from resurfacing. Donald Trump engaged in a variety of incidents and acts while serving as President of the United States, which many view as reckless and harmful to the country. In May 2020, let's look at some of the key concerns and talk about why a lot of people believe his administration was a complete failure. George Floyd was a black man who was slain by a police officer in Minneapolis. This sad event sparked widespread protests against institutional racism and police violence, rather than addressing the underlying issues and fostering togetherness. Early in 2020, COVID-19 hit the U.S., and Trump's approach drew harsh criticism. He called demonstrators thugs, used foul language regularly, and threatened to use force to maintain control of the situation. It was clear that he lacked empathy and was unable to bring the nation together at this difficult and polarizing moment. Calling it a hoax, Trump downplayed the virus's seriousness and reassured the public that it would eventually go away. The testing that is necessary to contain a pandemic was resisted by his government. He also contradicted himself quite a bit. The general public thought his answer was disjointed and ineffective. Medical professionals ignored the benefits of social isolation and masks in favor of experimental treatments. The lack of a unified national strategy as a result, leaving the states to fend for themselves. The United States had one of the highest rates of infection and mortality worldwide by the time Trump left office. During his administration, needless misery and deaths were caused by his mishandling of the disease. Trump regularly used hateful and divisive language. He referred to immigrants from Mexico as criminals and implemented a travel ban that was seen as discriminatory and un-American, specifically aimed at a number of countries with sizable Muslim populations. Following incidents such as the 2017 Charlottesville demonstration, his refusal to openly denounce white racists sent a horrifying message that hatred and violence are acceptable. Though largely justified, Trump's remarks fuel hatred, bolstered racist organizations, and caused division among people. The use of divisive language in the community during the COVID-19 epidemic led to an increase in hate crimes and racial tensions. Trump sometimes referred to the coronavirus as the Chinese virus, or Kung Flu. This was a dangerous and misleading statement that stoked prejudice against Asians. Consequently, there was a noticeable increase in hate crimes and prejudice against Asian Americans, who were wrongfully blamed for the virus instead of encouraging empathy and solidarity. Even though Trump discussed the economy a lot, the situation was more complicated before the pandemic. His words put innocent people in danger and widened the rift in the nation. When COVID-19 struck, his massive tax cuts mostly benefited the wealthy and significantly increased the national debt, exacerbating the already precarious position of the economy. The absence of a coordinated response sparked the economic crisis that cost millions of Americans their jobs and caused firms to fail.
African Americans for Trump, call it whatever the hell you want.
But you see, black people walking around with my mugshot. The black people are so much on my side now because they see what's happening to me happens to them.
I love the black community, and I've done more for the black community than any other president.
I'm being indicted for you the black population.
A lot of people agree. I have done more for the African American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln.
Numerous environmental protections were repealed under Trump's presidency, which had detrimental long-term impacts on the ecosystem. In an effort to tackle climate change, he pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement and loosened rules governing emissions and pollutants. These deeds endangered future generations by damaging the ecosystem and impeding attempts to mitigate climate change. Even after the initial lockdowns, many people still faced hardships as the economy recovered unevenly and slowly. Due to Trump's attempts to impede investigations into his actions, particularly the Russia inquiry, an unprecedented number of top officials were indicted and found guilty during his presidency. Trump's attempts to obstruct these investigations between 2016 and 2020 gave rise to grave worries about power abuse and the credibility of democratic institutions. His leadership was marred by several ethical transgressions and accusations of corruption. The American people were dissatisfied with Donald Trump's government from 2016 until 2020 due to its incompetence and poor leadership. The present government was in office from 2016 until 2020. This president's inability to perform his duties effectively was one of the most notable features of his presidency. His handling of important crises, such as the incident with George Floyd, the breakout of COVID-19 and racial tensions, made it abundantly plain that he was unable to connect with other people and appreciate the opinions or perspectives of other people. This was evident from the manner in which he handled these crises, despite the fact that his programs frequently favored the wealthy at the expense of the average American. His speech contributed to the alienation and enmity that existed in the country at the time. This was the case despite the fact that his legislation was frequently implemented. In addition to this, the fact that he broke ethical standards and increased the amount of protection that was provided for the environment was another factor that contributed to the legacy that he left behind. He left behind a legacy that was even more tainted with pollution than it had been a moment before. In order for voters to make an informed decision, it is essential for them to keep in mind the instability and damage that was caused. In order to properly appreciate the magnificent gift that has been bestowed upon us, voters are actively taking the future into account when making decisions. We want to seize this opportunity and use it to the fullest. We plan to capitalize on this specific instance where every effort was made to uncover the lies and explosives, finally leading to their unraveling. People should have kept this in mind while Trump was in office. In addition, it is crucial that people seek out leaders who will genuinely make an effort to promote the welfare of everyone. Comedian Kimmel is renowned for his impeccable timing and razor-sharp sense of comedy. It is with great shame that one can say that this roast will be remembered as a seminal work of political satire. The roast will be remembered for a very long time because of the ingenious puns and humorous anecdotes that were told. But Kimmel's roast is more than simply a humorous reminder of how important it is to hold people in positions of power accountable for the deeds they commit. Kimmel's roast is full of fun. The orange turd's facade is crumbling under the weight of Kimmel's withering criticism. But at the same time, we are compelled to consider the larger ramifications that this will have on our democracy. Kimmel's satirical treatment of the contender is a reliable source of entertainment. Furthermore, since everything is happening at the same time, it's feasible that Grumpy Trumpy will ultimately learn his lesson, or conversely, that he will simply continue to stamp his feet and yell foul anytime someone points out his ignorance. Time will tell, but one thing is certain: the truth will almost always surface as long as there are brilliant comedians like Kimmel to hold Trump accountable. One of these situations can be achieved. It is not impossible for either of these events to occur. Both of these outcomes are attainable. As stated differently, this is the one topic that can be discussed with complete assurance. There is only one fact that can be confirmed with absolute certainty.